In a remote village nestled amidst snow-covered hills, a young girl named Ilara lived under the oppressive rule of her stepmother, Morwenna. Ilara, quiet and kind, had lost her mother at a tender age, and her father, seeking companionship, had married Morwenna, a woman whose heart was as cold as the winter that enveloped their village. Morwenna, envious of Ilara's beauty and grace, subjected her to relentless chores and cruel punishments. Among the harshest was the daily ritual of forcing Ilara to walk barefoot through the snow to fetch water from a distant well. Each morning, as the sun barely peeked over the horizon, Ilara would step out into the biting cold, her feet sinking into the icy terrain, leaving a trail of crimson footprints behind. The villagers, witnessing Ilara's suffering, chose silence over intervention. Some pitied her, offering sympathetic glances, while others turned a blind eye, unwilling to challenge Morwenna's authority. Ilara bore the pain with quiet resilience, her spirit unbroken despite the physical torment. As days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the snow seemed to respond to Ilara's presence. Her footprints lingered longer than they should, glowing faintly under the moonlight. Whispers spread through the village about the mysterious girl whose steps left behind a trail of light. One evening, as Ilara returned from the well, she noticed a peculiar pattern in her footprints, symbols and shapes that seemed to tell a story. Intrigued, she began to pay closer attention, realizing that the snow was capturing her emotions, her memories, and her pain. The village elder, a wise woman named Talia, took notice of the phenomenon. She approached Ilara, seeking to understand the magic behind the footprints. Ilara shared her experiences, and Talia, recognizing the ancient symbols, revealed that Ilara was the descendant of a long line of women with a deep connection to the snow. Empowered by this revelation, Ilara began to embrace her heritage, learning to harness the power within her. She discovered that her suffering had awakened a dormant magic, allowing her to communicate with the snow and the spirits it held. Morwenna, sensing a shift in Ilara, grew fearful and intensified her punishments. Yet, Ilara remained steadfast, her connection to the snow growing stronger with each passing day. The villagers, witnessing the transformation, began to question their complicity and the cruelty inflicted upon the girl. One fateful night, as a blizzard engulfed the village, Ilara stood at the edge of the forest, her footprints illuminating the path behind her. The snow swirled around her, whispering secrets and offering comfort. In that moment, Ilara understood her purpose: to bring healing and change to a village frozen in fear and silence. With newfound strength, Ilara confronted Morwenna, her voice steady and commanding. The snow responded to her call, encasing Morwenna in a cocoon of ice, rendering her powerless. The villagers, witnessing the act, felt a collective awakening, recognizing the need to atone for their inaction. Ilara, now revered as the Snow Maiden, became a symbol of resilience and transformation. She used her powers to nurture the land, bringing prosperity and warmth to the once cold village. Her story was passed down through generations, a testament to the strength found in kindness and the magic that lies within. The cold stretched across the land like an old curse. Winter in the village was never gentle, never quiet, only white and sharp and cruel. The wind howled like a grieving mother, and the trees stood frozen, their branches twisted in the agony of bearing too much silence. Snow covered everything: the thatched roofs, the narrow footpaths, the crooked fences that marked the village boundary. It fell relentlessly, silently, as though the sky itself were ashamed of what it kept dropping. She walked barefoot through it every day. No one remembered when the punishment had begun. Some said it was after her father died, others whispered that the stepmother had always hated her, even when he was alive. But all agreed that there was something wrong in the way the girl bore her suffering. Quiet. Without protest. Without tears. She simply walked each morning and every evening, barefoot across the snow-covered earth, her feet red and raw and yet somehow still moving forward. The snow should have consumed her. It should have stolen the heat from her blood, cracked her bones, and left her a pale ghost under the open sky. But it never did. That was the first strange thing. No matter how much her skin burned with cold, she survived. Not healthy, not whole, but alive. And her footprints, they were always perfect. The villagers had noticed, though they pretended not to. The footprints never smudged, never melted, never faded. While the wind erased every other mark on the road, every boot print, wheel rut, and dog paw, the girl's footprints remained, undisturbed, as if the snow wanted them. As if the land, cold and ancient, chose to remember her. Even when the snow fell fresh and heavy during the night, her previous day's footprints would still be there in the morning, glowing faintly, whispering with frost. One child, bold and wide-eyed, once dared to step into them, mimicking her journey. He came back shivering and mute, unable to explain what he felt, only that the snow inside her footprints had been warmer than the rest of the path and full of whispers. After that, no one else tried. The stepmother didn't notice. Or she didn't care. She would stand in the doorway each morning, holding the wooden ladle she used to stir her bitter soups, and order the girl out. "Take the long path to the woodpile," she'd bark. "Bring kindling. Hurry back. And don't drag your feet, you'll dirty the snow." Dirty the snow. As if that were even possible. As if it wasn't already a graveyard of soundless regrets. The girl never replied. She would nod, take her torn shawl tighter around her shoulders and step into the open, the cold wind biting her cheeks as she walked. Her feet would sink slightly into the powdery white, and her path would begin. Always a straight line. Always sure. And always left behind. As she walked, she began to feel the silence differently. It wasn't just silence. It was listening. The snow, the trees, even the air, they were listening to her. Watching her. Bearing witness to every step. Sometimes, when she walked alone at dusk, when the sky was bruised purple and the moon began to peer out from behind thin clouds, she could hear the snow sigh. Not crunch. Not crack. But sigh. As if it were tired of being trampled by lies. As if it longed to be touched gently. As if her bare feet were a language the world had nearly forgotten but could finally hear again. The footprints began to glow soon after. Not brightly. Not enough to startle anyone. Just a shimmer. A faint halo of blue-white light, like the breath of stars resting beneath the surface. And only at night. Only when the village had turned away, when the fires were low and the cruel words had gone to sleep. She noticed it first one evening when she returned late from the edge of the forest. Her arms ached with the load of firewood, her skin numb with cold. But her eyes were sharp, used to reading the dark. She paused just before the final bend home and looked back. There they were. Glowing footprints. 10 of them. Then 20. Then all of them, snaking away behind her, etched in silver light like a trail drawn by the moon's finger. She didn't gasp. Didn't run. Just watched. And the snow glowed back, quiet and calm, as if saying, "Yes, we see you." After that night she walked a little differently. Still in pain, still silent, but with the knowledge that she was not alone. The snow was no longer just a punishment. It had become her witness. Her confessor. Her shield. She began to leave tiny things behind in the snow, bits of thread from her dress, broken twigs, cracked seeds. Not because she was careless, but because she was starting to speak in a language no one else understood. The snow responded with patterns. The wind picked up and bent around her, forming brief whispers, sounds that had rhythm but no words. And once, just once, a fox appeared. It was pale, almost white, and watched her from the edge of the woods. Its eyes glowed like her footprints. It didn't move. Didn't blink. Only stood and watched her walk. The next day there were fox tracks alongside her prints. As if something had begun to follow her path. Still, the villagers kept their distance. The stepmother sneered more often now, flinched when she touched the doorknob after the girl returned, as if her hands carried frost that bit back. One neighbor whispered that they saw steam rising from the girl's footprints even on the coldest nights. But none dared speak out loud. Not yet. Fear still ruled them. The snow didn't care about their silence. It kept listening. And now it began answering. A rhythm pulsed under the girl's feet, not unlike a heartbeat. She would feel it during her longest walks, warmth blooming just under the surface, like an old truth rising. She began to walk farther, sometimes pretending to forget the kindling, just to see where the snow would lead her. New paths opened. Paths only she could see. The footprints didn't just stay, they spread. They began to curve, to twist, to form strange symbols when she wasn't looking. One morning, a child pointed at them and asked, "What does that shape mean?" But the mother hushed the child and pulled them away. The girl's eyes lingered on the curve in the snow. It did mean something. She didn't know what yet. But she would. Because the snow was not just holding her prints. It was reading them back to her. She was writing something. And the snow, ancient and silent, was writing back. The wind carried whispers through the village, soft murmurs that seemed to emanate from the very heart of winter itself. Each gust bore tales untold, secrets long buried beneath layers of snow and ice. The villagers, once dismissive of such phenomena, began to take notice. Elders spoke in hushed tones, recalling ancient legends of spirits that walked among them during the coldest months. They murmured about the girl with the glowing footprints, suggesting that something old and magical accompanied her on her solitary walks. Children, once warned to stay indoors during snowstorms, now pressed their faces against frosted windows, hoping to catch a glimpse of the girl and the ethereal glow that followed her. Some claimed to hear melodies in the wind, tunes that resonated with both sorrow and hope. The village, once silent and indifferent, now buzzed with a mixture of fear, curiosity, and reverence. The girl's stepmother, Morwenna, grew increasingly agitated. She dismissed the whispers as mere superstition, attributing the villagers' fascination to idle minds. Yet even she couldn't ignore the changes. The air inside their home felt colder, the shadows deeper. Objects moved inexplicably and the fire struggled to stay lit. Morwenna's dreams were plagued by visions of icy landscapes and haunting melodies. One night, driven by a mix of fear and desperation, Morwenna confronted the girl. "What have you done?" she demanded, her voice trembling. "What curse have you brought upon this house?" The girl met her gaze calmly. "I have done nothing," she replied softly. "The snow remembers and it speaks." Morwenna, unable to comprehend the depth of the girl's connection to the winter elements, lashed out, imposing harsher punishments. But the more she tried to suppress the girl's spirit, the stronger the whispers became. The village, once complicit in the girl's suffering, began to rally around her, offering warmth, food, and companionship. As the season progressed, the snow's whispers grew louder, forming coherent words and phrases. They spoke of justice, of retribution, and of a legacy that could no longer be silenced. The girl, now fully attuned to the snow's messages, embraced her role as the village's protector and guide. Her footprints, once symbols of pain, became emblems of hope and resilience. In time the village transformed. Where once there was apathy there was now empathy. The snow, once a harbinger of suffering, became a canvas for stories of strength and unity. And at the heart of it all stood the girl, her presence a testament to the enduring power of kindness and the whispers beneath the ice. The snow had thickened, and the sky remained a bruised shade of gray for days, as if the sun itself had abandoned the village. Whispers had begun curling like smoke through streets and homes. Some said the girl's footprints glowed even under fresh snow. Others swore they'd seen the wind pause when it reached her, circling gently around her body as if greeting an old friend. Morwenna, her stepmother, heard every whisper. Though no one spoke to her directly, out of fear or disdain, she knew the village watched her differently now. Their eyes didn't just see a widow trying to keep order in a household. They saw cruelty in her hands. They saw shame in the way the girl's toes turned blue, in the bloodstains that dotted the snow behind her. Morwenna's paranoia grew like frost on glass, quiet, cold, unstoppable. Every time she saw the girl return from the snow barefoot and silent, upright and calm, her rage twisted deeper. It should have broken the girl by now. The snow, the punishment, the humiliation. Yet each day the girl returned stronger, not in body perhaps but in spirit. Her silence no longer felt like submission. It felt like defiance. "You think their stares mean they care?" Morwenna hissed one night. "They watch because they're afraid of you. As they should be. And I won't let you bewitch this village." The girl didn't respond. She only looked at her with eyes like still water, reflective, cold, and deeper than they had any right to be. That same night, Morwenna made her decree. From now on, the girl would walk through the deepest parts of the wood, barefoot, from dusk until dawn. No shawl. No mittens. No lantern. Just her in the snow and the wild. The village watched as she left that evening, the girl stepping into the tree line as the last hint of orange faded from the sky. Mothers whispered prayers for her. Children held their breath. Even the dogs did not bark. The first night, the girl walked through snow that reached her calves. Her skin felt like glass under the cold, yet she kept walking. At first, the pain was unbearable. Each step felt like a blade. But then, somewhere between the trees and the stars, the cold stopped hurting. It didn't vanish, it simply changed. It greeted her. The snow no longer resisted her. It cushioned her steps. Her bare feet, raw and red, began to shimmer faintly, leaving behind a trail that glowed under moonlight like crushed pearls. And there, in the silence of the forest, something began to walk beside her. She didn't see it, not at first. But she felt it, the presence of something vast and ancient. The trees, usually brittle and still, bent slightly as she passed, their branches whispering in a language that wasn't spoken aloud. The wind curled around her, carrying voices that didn't frighten her. They said her name not with fear, but with recognition. She didn't understand everything, but she felt it. The snow, the forest, the cold, they knew her. They had always known her. By the second night, she began to see clearer. Shapes moved with her, not threatening but protective. The snowfall slowed where she walked. The moonlight followed her path. And most curiously of all animals, foxes, owls, even deer, watched her without running. One fox even followed her quietly, its paws never making a sound. Back in the village, Morwenna waited up, staring at the window, waiting for the girl to return broken, limping, frostbitten. But when the girl walked back into the home just before dawn, cheeks pale and eyes glowing with something uncanny, Morwenna's hand trembled. "You were supposed to suffer," Morwenna whispered. The girl didn't flinch. "I did," she said. "But not in the way you hoped." This only drove Morwenna deeper into her fury. She commanded longer walks, colder hours, forbade the girl from eating warm meals or sleeping by the fire. But the girl never complained. Her silence, once a sign of oppression, became something regal. She moved through the world like a ghost queen, untouched, watched, and unknowable. Children began to copy her footprints in the snow. Women began to leave small offerings, herbs, wool scraps, trinkets, along her walking paths, unsure why but compelled by something in their hearts. They couldn't name what they felt. Reverence? Guilt? Oh. Morwenna saw it all unravel and blamed the girl for every shift. The villagers' respect. The uneasy dreams. The sense that the snow had become a witness to every lie ever told in their streets. So she went further. She dragged the girl to the center of the village one evening, right as the snow started to fall again, soft and endless. "If she's a spirit, then let the spirits keep her," Morwenna shouted. "She'll walk till she drops. She'll walk barefoot till the frost eats her bones." But the villagers no longer cheered her cruelty. They stood silent, watching. One elder stepped forward and murmured, "Maybe you should be careful. The snow has ears now." Still, Morwenna sent her into the woods again. This time the girl smiled faintly before she left. Her feet hit the snow like they belonged to it. The wind rushed past her, but it felt warm. The trees opened for her like gates. And behind her, her footprints didn't melt. They stayed, shining and humming. That night, Morwenna didn't sleep. The fire went out even though it was newly kindled. The air was heavy, the silence unbearable. She heard things, knocks at the window, soft voices calling her name. And when she looked outside, there they were, bare footprints, glowing, circling her home. From that night on, Morwenna stopped giving orders. She no longer shouted. She no longer waited up. She avoided the windows. And the girl? She kept walking, barefoot, wrapped in moonlight and mystery. The morning after the footprints appeared, the village was restless. The whispers lingered in the air like a cold mist, seeping into every corner and stirring old fears and forgotten hopes. Many villagers glanced toward the swirling spiral of glowing prints, unsure whether to be afraid or awed. But one man, an elder named Obesai, stood apart from the murmurs. He was quiet and deliberate, his eyes sharp beneath heavy brows, his hands worn from decades of tending to the village's ancient knowledge. To Obesai, those footprints were not just a mystery, they were a message. Obesai had spent his life poring over old scrolls and relics, listening to stories passed down through generations. When he saw the prints, he felt a stirring deep in his bones, as if the snow itself was whispering secrets meant only for him. He wrapped his cloak tighter around his shoulders and stepped carefully through the cold village square, the frost crunching beneath his worn sandals. The footprints glowed faintly as he approached, the icy symbols sparkling with a strange light that seemed almost alive. He knelt beside the snow, tracing the delicate curves of the footprints with his trembling fingers. The patterns were ancient, a language older than any written word, carried not by ink or voice but by frost and cold air. Obesai's mind flickered to the stories his grandmother had told him, tales of spirits who walked the land before the village was even born, who spoke through the wind and left signs in the snow. Those spirits were protectors, bound to the cycles of nature and the lives of those chosen to carry their power. Obesai closed his eyes and whispered an old prayer, a blessing meant to call forth truth and clarity. As he spoke, the chill in the air deepened, and images began to form behind his closed lids, not visions of the present, but of a past buried beneath layers of ice and time. He saw a small hut on the edge of the forest, its roof heavy with snow, smoke curling gently from the chimney. Inside, a young woman sat beside a fire, her hands weaving carefully through herbs and frozen flowers. Her hair was as white as the snow outside, her eyes deep pools of blue that seemed to hold the winter sky itself. She was a healer, known among the villagers as the Snow Mother, a woman with the gift to mend broken bodies and souls with the power of the cold. Her breath could still fevered skin, and her touch could calm storms raging within hearts. The woman's name was Anya. Obesai's heart ached as he remembered the story of Anya's love, a man from the village who had promised to protect her and their child. But fear and jealousy had driven a wedge between them, and when Anya gave birth to her daughter, the villagers' suspicion grew. The girl was born in the depths of winter, with skin pale as frost and eyes that shimmered like stars in the night. Some whispered she was touched by the spirits, others feared she carried a curse. To protect her from those who would do harm, Anya hid her daughter's true nature, but the shadow of doubt had already settled over the child. Obesai opened his eyes, breathing deeply of the crisp air. The footprints before him were not merely marks in the snow. They were a map of that pain, a record of the girl's suffering and endurance, and a testament to the power she carried within her. The spirals and symbols told a story of someone marked by the spirits, chosen to walk a path both lonely and sacred. He rose slowly and faced the gathered villagers, their faces pale and anxious. "These prints are no accident," he said, voice steady but filled with reverence. "They speak of a soul tied to the winter, one who carries the strength of the Snow Mother." A murmur passed through the crowd. Many looked at the girl with new eyes, seeing not just a victim of cruelty, but a living link to their ancestors and the land itself. Obesai continued, "Her suffering is real, yes. But it is also a source of power. The spirits have marked her for a purpose. We must listen and learn, not fear and cast her out." Among the crowd, some nodded slowly, while others exchanged uneasy glances. Fear was not easily tamed, but curiosity had taken root. Later that day Obesai sought out the girl. She was sitting by the frozen riverbank, her breath forming small clouds that danced with the cold wind. Her eyes, once downcast, now held a flicker of something stronger, hope, perhaps, or the first stirrings of acceptance. Obesai sat beside her, careful not to startle her. "The prince," he said gently, "they tell your story. The pain, the strength, the legacy you carry." She looked at him silently as if weighing the truth of his words. Then slowly she nodded. Obesai told her about Anya, the Snow Mother, and the sacred bond passed through their bloodline. "Your mother was a healer of this land," he explained. "She knew the power of the cold, the spirit that dwells in the frost and the wind. You are her daughter and the snow remembers." The girl's lips trembled, a mix of sorrow and wonder crossing her face. For years she had felt alone, cursed, punished for something she did not understand. But now, hearing of her mother's strength, the burden seemed to shift. "You are not broken," Obesai said softly. "You are chosen. And with that choice comes a great responsibility, to protect, to heal, and to lead." The girl's gaze drifted to the snow beneath them. The faint glow of the footprints lingered, even as the sun rose higher and began to warm the earth. The snow was a memory, a message written in ice and spirit. It carried the story of pain transformed into power. In the days that followed, Obesai guided her through ancient rites and forgotten songs. He taught her to listen to the wind, to read the language of frost on the windowpane, and to feel the heartbeat of the winter world around her. Each lesson deepened the connection between the girl and the snow, awakening a strength that had lain dormant. The villagers watched with growing respect and cautious hope. The girl who had once been a figure of pity and cruelty was becoming something else entirely, a living symbol of endurance, mystery, and the quiet power of nature itself. And though the snow would eventually melt with the coming of spring, the memory it held, the legacy of the Snow Mother and her daughter, would remain, etched forever in the hearts of the village. Deep beneath the floorboards of Obesai's humble home, hidden beneath layers of dust and time, lay an ancient scroll. For years the elder had protected it quietly, knowing its power but wary of revealing its secrets too soon. On a bitter evening, with the wind howling against the eaves and the snow falling thick and silent, Obesai carefully unrolled the fragile parchment by the flickering light of a single candle. The scroll was old, its edges brittle, its ink faded but still legible to one who had studied the old tongue. It told a story long forgotten by most in the village, a tale whispered only in the hush of winter nights and spoken of in reverent tones by those who remembered the true history of the land. The tale was of a child of the frost, a girl born under the harshest winter, marked by the spirits to carry the weight of justice and healing for a broken world. This child was destined to awaken the slumbering power of the snow, to bring balance to those who had been wronged and to punish those who had caused suffering. As Obesai read, his breath caught. The description on the scroll matched the girl to a haunting degree, the pale skin like fresh snow, eyes bright as ice under moonlight, and the marks of pain etched deep within her soul. The scroll spoke of a mother, a snow healer, who had been murdered unjustly, leaving her daughter alone in a world that feared her. Obesai's mind raced, connecting the threads of the past with the present. The girl before him was not merely a victim of her stepmother's cruelty, she was the living embodiment of an ancient prophecy. The snow around them was no indifferent bystander, it was alive with memory, and it remembered the injustice done to her mother. That night, Obasai sought out the girl, the weight of the scroll's revelations heavy in his heart. He found her seated quietly by the frozen river, the moonlight casting silvery shadows over the ice. She looked up as he approached, her eyes reflecting the cold fire of the night. He knelt beside her and placed the scroll carefully in her hands. "This," he said softly, "is the story of your bloodline. Your mother was a healer, a protector of this village and the winter that sustains it. But she was taken from this world in a terrible way. The snow has not forgotten her pain and neither should we." The girl's fingers trembled as she traced the faded letters. Tears welled in her eyes, but her face held a newfound resolve. The burden of her suffering now carried a deeper meaning, a call to awaken the spirit of justice her mother had once embodied. Obasai continued, "You are the child of the frost. Your pain is not in vain. It is a spark that will ignite change, not just for you but for everyone who has been wronged." The villagers, hearing the elder's words and witnessing the strange, glowing footprints that refused to fade, began to shift in their attitudes. Fear gave way to reverence, suspicion to hope. The girl's footsteps in the snow were no longer marks of shame but symbols of a legacy reborn. As the cold winter deepened, so did her connection to the snow's ancient spirit. She learned to listen not only with her ears but with her heart, to the whispers beneath the ice, to the stories told by the frost on the trees, and to the power rising within her. The snow was alive, remembering her mother's sacrifice, and through her, it would bring justice and healing to the village once more. The snow had been falling steadily for days, blanketing the village in an unbroken sheet of white. Each morning the girl's footprints stretched out across the frozen ground, perfectly clear against the soft snow. But now they were doing something new, something impossible. They led with quiet certainty, weaving and curling through the village until they reached a single door, the stepmother's home. The villagers gathered silently at a respectful distance, whispers spreading like wildfire. Everyone had heard the stories, the girl's punishment, the mysterious footprints that glowed faintly at night, the snow that seemed alive. But now the snow was telling a new story. The footprints were no longer just her path, they were a map and a message all in one. Around the stepmother's home, the footprints formed strange, intricate patterns, sharp angles and looping circles that pulsed softly with an otherworldly light. The shapes twisted like thorny vines, a sacred language of frost and ice that spoke of betrayal and hidden truths. Some villagers recognized the symbols as ancient marks of accusation, a call for justice written not in words but in nature itself. Inside her house, the stepmother shivered, though the fire burned bright. Fear clutched her heart as she heard the growing murmurs outside. She dared not step outside, but she could see through her frosted window the unnatural glow spreading around her home. The village was watching and the snow itself was judging. The girl stood at the edge of the crowd, calm and composed for the first time in many months. The cold wind whipped through her hair, but her gaze was steady. Her lips, long sealed by fear and silence, parted, and her voice rose clear and strong, a voice that carried the chill of winter and the warmth of truth. "It was you," she said quietly, eyes fixed on the stepmother's trembling form. "You betrayed my mother. You brought her pain and death." The crowd gasped. No one had heard her speak before, but now her words struck like shards of ice, sharp and undeniable. As she spoke, the snow around her began to rise, swirling in a slow, graceful dance. Flakes twisted upward, forming shapes that seemed almost alive, a crown of frost hovering above her head, delicate as lace but strong as steel. The snow answered her, lifting her voice into a chorus of ancient power that filled the silent night. The stepmother's face drained of color, her hands clenching the edges of the window frame. She opened her mouth to deny, to plead, but the snow's cold grip silenced her. The footprints continued to glow, pulsating with the story of lies, pain, and betrayal that no one could ignore. Obasai the elder stepped forward from the crowd, his eyes filled with both sorrow and resolve. "The snow remembers everything," he said softly. "It has carried the pain of this family for too long. Now the truth will no longer be hidden." The villagers began to murmur in agreement. Some looked at the stepmother with pity, others with anger. The weight of her cruelty was now undeniable, laid bare by the very earth and sky above them. The girl took a step forward, the frost crown sparkling in the moonlight. "Justice is not vengeance," she said firmly. "It is truth spoken aloud. It is the healing that follows pain." The stepmother sank to her knees, defeated not by words alone, but by the undeniable power of the snow and the girl's calm strength. The village watched as the cruel facade crumbled, replaced by the quiet promise of change. From that night on, the footprints around the stepmother's home remained, a chilling reminder of betrayal and a warning to those who would harm others. The village understood that the snow was not just cold and harsh, it was alive with memory and justice, carrying the legacy of the girl and her mother. The girl's voice, once silent, became a symbol of hope, her connection to the snow an unbreakable bond that protected the village from darkness and cruelty. She was no longer just the barefoot girl, she was the guardian of truth, the voice of the snow's ancient spirit, and the living proof that even the deepest wounds could give birth to strength and justice. The air was crisp and biting, the village cloaked in a thick layer of snow that muffled every sound but the soft crunch of footsteps. This time, the footsteps were not just the girl's, they were the herald of something far greater, a force of nature intertwined with her very being. She walked with purpose, her bare feet pressing firmly into the snow, each print glowing faintly with a cold, blue light. The villagers watched in awe and trepidation as the glowing footprints stretched ahead, weaving a path that seemed to pulse with life. At the center of the village stood the stepmother's house, now surrounded by an unnatural frost that shimmered and crackled in the cold air. The stepmother herself was trapped inside, pacing in panic, eyes darting to the windows as if searching for escape. But escape was no longer an option, not tonight. The girl's footprints circled the house, forming an intricate, unbroken ring of ice that rose from the ground like a crystalline wall. The circle shimmered with power, a cage forged from the very elements, cold and unforgiving. The stepmother's breath came in shallow gasps as the icy barrier sealed her in, trapping her within the boundaries of her own guilt. The girl stopped just outside the circle, her gaze steady and unwavering. She lowered her voice to a whisper, and the snow around her responded, swirling and sparkling as if listening to her every word. "Every step I take reveals the truth you tried to hide," she said softly. "The memories you buried beneath your lies." With that, her next step pressed firmly into the snow, and suddenly, a vision bloomed from the icy ground. A shimmering memory played out like a silent film visible only to those standing near. The villagers gasped as the past unfolded before their eyes. They saw the stepmother, young and cruel, plotting in the shadows. Her face twisted with envy and malice as she confronted the girl's mother, a kind woman with eyes full of warmth and strength. The confrontation was fierce and brief, but its consequences echoed through time. The stepmother's betrayal had shattered the family, leading to the mother's untimely death and the girl's harsh punishment. The snow whispered around the villagers, carrying the weight of the revealed truths. Each footprint the girl left brought forth another memory, secrets, lies, and pain that had long been hidden beneath the surface. The village listened, learning what they had refused to see. The stepmother's face twisted with fear and shame as the memories exposed her. She pounded on the icy walls, her voice trembling. "It's not true. You have no proof. This is witchcraft." But the snow was relentless. It hummed and glowed, its power a silent judge that needed no words. The icy circle held firm, and the footprints continued to shine, each one a beacon of justice. The girl's voice grew stronger, filled with the quiet authority that came from knowing her own truth. "The snow remembers everything. It carries the pain and the strength of my mother, of myself, and of this village. You cannot hide from what you have done." She took another step forward, and the vision shifted to show the stepmother's ongoing cruelty, the long, cold walks barefoot in the snow, the harsh punishments, the silent suffering endured by the girl. The villagers' expressions softened, a mixture of sorrow and regret filling their hearts. "But justice is not just punishment," the girl said, her voice steady. "It is healing. It is the truth spoken aloud so that we may move forward." With each step she took, the icy circle grew stronger, but so did the warmth in the village's hearts. The snow's cold beauty was balanced by the fire of justice and the hope of redemption. The stepmother's resistance faltered and tears welled in her eyes. She whispered, "I am sorry. I was afraid. I did not know what I was doing." The girl's gaze softened, but her resolve remained unshaken. "Then let this be a lesson, for all of us. Fear can destroy but truth can heal. The snow will always remember and so will we." As the night deepened, the villagers began to gather around the circle, the glow from the footprints casting gentle light on their faces. They spoke quietly among themselves, their voices carrying the promise of change and the hope of a new beginning. The girl stepped back, the circle of ice slowly melting away, leaving behind only her glowing footprints, a lasting symbol of the justice that had been served. From that night on, the village knew that the snow was not just a cold blanket covering the earth. It was a living memory, a keeper of truth, and a protector of those who had been wronged. And the girl, once silent and barefoot, became the village's guardian, her footsteps forever etched in the snow as a reminder that justice, though cold and quiet, would always find its way. The girl had become something far beyond what anyone in the village could have ever imagined. No longer the fragile barefoot child who suffered under her stepmother's cruelty, she had risen from pain to power, from silence to a voice that commanded respect and wonder. The snow, once a symbol of punishment and cold despair, had transformed into her domain, her kingdom of frost, ice, and glowing light. Wherever she walked, the snow seemed to welcome her, bending gently beneath her feet rather than biting at her skin. The sharp sting of cold that once racked her body had faded, replaced by a deep connection, an unspoken bond between her spirit and the winter itself. It was as if the snow recognized her as its queen, a chosen guardian of the ancient powers that slumbered beneath the frozen earth. Her footprints no longer faded away after her passing. Instead, they glowed softly with a mystical light, illuminating the path for those who followed. These prints were no ordinary marks. They carried messages, lessons, and warnings. Each print was a story, a teaching, a whisper of the frost's wisdom. To the villagers, they were signs of hope and protection, a living legacy that promised the winter's harshness could be tempered by grace and strength. Children of the village, wide-eyed and curious, began to follow the glowing footprints left behind by the Frost Queen. With innocent laughter and eager hearts, they traced her steps through the snow, learning to respect the winter's power and the lessons it held. The elders watched with quiet pride, knowing that the girl who once endured so much cruelty had become a symbol of endurance and transformation. Stories of the barefoot girl who had walked through the snow with the spirits and returned as the Frost Queen spread far beyond the village. Travelers from distant lands came to hear the tale, fascinated by the legend of a girl whose suffering had awakened the magic of the winter and changed the fate of her people forever. The Frost Queen's presence brought more than just awe, it brought healing. Those who were sick or weary found that following her glowing path brought relief. The snow around her seemed to hold a soothing power, melting pain and sorrow like frost retreating before the morning sun. Villagers who had once ignored the girl's suffering now came to her with reverence, seeking guidance and comfort. Yet, her legacy was not merely about healing or power. It was about balance. The Frost Queen taught that pain could be transformed, that even the coldest hardships could nurture growth if met with courage and grace. Her footsteps reminded the people that every challenge held a secret gift, every hardship a chance for renewal. At times, the glowing footprints warned of approaching danger, avalanches, storms, or threats to the village. The snow would shimmer with an urgent light, alerting all to prepare and protect. In these moments, the Frost Queen became not only a healer but a guardian, standing between her people and the harsh forces of nature. The stepmother, once feared and despised, had faded into the background of this new era. Her cruelty was remembered only as a shadow against the radiant light of the Frost Queen's reign. Forgiveness was not forgotten but was seen as part of the healing process. The stepmother's story a cautionary tale of envy and fear that no longer held power over the village. Generations passed, but the story of the barefoot girl and her glowing footprints remained alive in the hearts of all who lived in the village. Songs were sung, poems were written, and paintings captured the image of the Frost Queen, a regal figure walking gracefully across a sparkling winter landscape, her feet bare yet unhurt, her eyes shining with the wisdom of the ages. Parents told their children to listen to the snow, to watch for the glowing prints as signs of the Queen's presence. They taught them to walk with respect for the earth and the forces that shaped their world. In this way, the Frost Queen's legacy became woven into the very fabric of village life, a timeless reminder of strength born from suffering. The girl, now a woman, walked through her kingdom with quiet dignity. She no longer needed to speak loudly to command attention. Her presence was enough. The snow whispered her name on the wind, and the stars seemed to twinkle in recognition of her journey. In moments of solitude, she would stand upon a hill overlooking the village, her glowing footprints tracing patterns in the snow that only she could understand. She thought of her mother, the snow healer, whose spirit lived on in the winter winds. She thought of the stepmother and the pain that had shaped her path. And she thought of the future, of the children who would follow her steps and carry forward the lessons of the frost. The legacy of the Frost Queen was not just about power or magic, it was about transformation. It was about the quiet strength that grows in the face of hardship, the courage to walk barefoot through the coldest storms, and the wisdom to turn suffering into light. As the seasons changed and the snow melted each year only to return again, the village knew that the Frost Queen would always be there, her footprints glowing softly in the winter night, a beacon of hope, justice and enduring strength.